Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of agricultureinformation.com, I welcome Dr. V.K. Jayaraghavendra Rao, and he will talk on the topic transition into natural farming, reality or myth. I now request the speaker to begin. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and sincerely thanking agriinformation.com. Myself, Dr. V.K. Jayaraghavendra Rao. I'm a retired principal scientist from the Indian Institute of Horticulture Research. Well, let me flag the questions for today's discussion. A lot of people are talking about organic farming, whether it is a concept or it is a narrative or it is a reality or it's a myth, or can we totally do away with inorganic farming? So these are some of the questions. I'll be also telling you the experiences of Sri Lanka where they went totally organic, okay, closed down the fertilizer production units and so on. And whether we should say natural farming or organic farming, which is the correct approach. So how to go about it is the today's topic of discussion. So that's myself, and you'll be, yeah, yeah, yeah. See now, very quickly, I'll just be running through the slides. See, today's thing is only about whether it is a reality or a myth. See, soil fertility is, a composite of soil organic matter, the chemical properties, and, the ground rock turning into the soil. Okay, and all these things totally together, there is a small ecosystem in the soil or in the agriculture or farm. We also call it as aquaponics. We say soilless cultivation where directly, the roots are going to absorb the nutrients. All those things are there. But now, what has made this natural farming to come into picture? Because the natural microflora and fauna has to be actually preserved. See, now if we see the 15 world's biggest fertilizer companies, okay, a lot of people are doing the inorganic fertilizers as well. At the same time, we are also trying to promote the organic fertilizers, natural farming. Natural to me is, just like a human body, you might have a pancreas stimulating some insulin, production is there. But by taking externally too much of allopathic or Ayurveda, Siddha medicine, whatever, you get addicted to that. That means you are not giving a chance for the body or the flora or the fauna which is available in the soil to rejuvenate itself, to cope up. See, for example, everybody has an antigen antibody reaction. Even in the human body, you get a headache. You need not take a paracetamol. Maybe automatically after some one day, it's just going to subside. Have a cup of coffee, it subsides. So for everything, why we say is inorganic fertilizers, or just like in case of the human body, going to a doctor, getting a surgery done, getting a prescription may not help. At the same time, if you do not know the physiology of your body, okay, and if you do not know the biology and the mechanisms of how the body antigen antibody reactions and responses take place, you cannot do any natural farming. So therefore, today's thing, the organic natural farming, people also call it as ZBNF, okay, zero based natural farming. I know I'll also be sharing one of the case studies I did at NARM. I had been to the Jogulamba district, the Peddapadu village where you have the Jurala Dam. So I'll tell you some of this. See, you may have a biostimulant, you may have a biopesticide, you may have a bioherbicide, you have a biofertilizers, and the biological activity in the soil is going to be then biodigesters. We have the ARCA microbial consortia. So there are so many such microbial consortia which are going to get activated in the soil. See, we don't say soil is a static system. We say soil is a dynamic system. It is just like the human body. You eat something, whether only human beings cannot digest cellulose. So therefore, because yours is a glucose-based metabolism, you get sugar and things like that. For example, the cow does not get diabetes because it can digest cellulose, and it is a four-chambered stomach, mesum, abomesum, and so on and so forth. So therefore, you should understand the biology of the soil, the biology of the plant and the ecosystem and the farming per se. See, we say cation exchange capacity. That means more number of positive ions in the soil, okay, it can attract the other negative ions. See, especially most of our, you see here, if a cation is positively charged, the magnesium, all the other essential nutrients will also have a negative ion. So therefore, the CEC is defined as a cation exchange capacity. If you have a more cation exchange capacity, that means very dynamically your soil is absorbing lot of negative charges and it is going to become stable and the plant nutrients are going to be there. See, suppose if you have sodium nitrate, which is a fertilizer, okay, sodium is a cation, NO3 is a negative ion. If sodium is already there, if the soil is having better exchange capacity, that means it can attract the nitrate ions, and then that's how it's going to be there. See, then a lot of fungi, bacteria, okay, they feed on the sugars exuded by plant exudates. Okay, we have the VAM, vesicular arbuscular mycorrhiza, which is going to do the phosphorus mobilization. A lot of protozoa eating bacteria and release plant available nitrogen. See, this is the dynamic. So therefore, we say that the soil should be more and more rich in organic content. I'm not just saying the humic acid and the flavic acid. Humic acid is more related to the soil organic matter, whereas flavic acid is more related to the plant per se. So very quickly we'll do, and nowadays the organic farming is also capitalizing on various plant hormones. It may be gibberellins, auxins, cytokinins, ethylene, a gas which is responsible for ripening of the fruits. Okay, abscisic acid for, removal of the leaves. Abscisic acid actually does the leaf removal. When you say flower shedding and leaf shedding, which occurs in the autumn season, it is because of the abscisic acid. So people are also trying to play with many of these hormones, right from the germination to seed dormancy. Then the latest fertilizer, biochar, that means all the sticks and residues of agriculture are going to be burnt and it is going to be made into something like a charcoal sort of a paste. They will add water and it is a very dark black liquid type of thing which is also going to be applied into the soil to enrich the organic carbon content. And once when the organic carbon content is more, okay, there's a lot of carbon there, and then that is how it helps the roots also to be strong and uptake of carbon, and which will help in a better photosynthesis. So that is how it is. And normally we take all our organic waste, we do a process called as pyrolysis. Pyrolysis means burning, okay, or boiling it in water and then converting into some semi-solid liquid. Then finally, when I talk about natural farming, we should also go for climate resilient crops. So whether it is going to be a drought area, drought tolerant crops, a high humidity, submerging, flood sort of situation, lot of salinity area, okay, Gulbarga and those sort of areas with black soil, deep soil, heat tolerant varieties. Okay, people have come out with all this climate resilient crops. That's why we have this ICR project on NICRA. Okay, the headquarters is at the Directorate of Dryland Research at Hyderabad. Okay, we call it as NICRA, means National Initiative for Climate Resilient Agriculture. So therefore, you have to be climate sensitive. Okay, you have to be heat tolerant, and then biofortified on multi-stress varieties. So for example, we did an experiment with IFCO in Koppal district where, nowadays, normally the bajra is having around 45 micrograms of iron. Okay, but that is not enough. So we have biofortified bajra varieties H1000, which claims to have 95 microgram of iron. Very absolute boon to the pregnant lactating mothers who require very, very high amounts of iron. Soluble iron, I mean to say. Otherwise, they will have this leg swelling. Okay, water accumulates, that's called the edema foot. So now biofertilizers may be bacterial biofertilizers. Basically, we are talking about the fungal biofertilizers where the mycorrhizal fungi, okay, for phosphorus mobilization and solubilization. Bacterial fertilizers, the famous Azotobacter rhizobium, okay, and then we have potassium solubilizing bacteria. We call it as Bacillus circulans. So, and all this plant growth promoting bacteria. So if you understand these things, today, IAHR, we have my students working there on ARCA microbial consortia. So they take a They analyze your soil, they analyze your climatic and edaphic factors, and then they're going to come out with a microbial consortium, maybe for Tamil Nadu, maybe for red soil, deep soil, black soil, submerged soil, laterite soil, which is totally acidic in nature, where cardamom comes up extremely well in a high altitude region. So that is how the biofertilizers, it may be algal, azoospermum, even compost and vermicompost. See, today's natural farming and organic farming is not a very ignorant type of farming. In the olden days, the farmers, ಅಯ್ಯೋ ನಂಗೇನು ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಕಣ್ರಿ, ನಾನು ತಿಪ್ಪೆ ಗೊಬ್ಬರ ಹಾಕಿವ್ನಿ, ಕೊಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಗೊಬ್ಬರ ಹಾಕಿವ್ನಿ. Maybe farmers know the rationality of why they are putting, but today's lecture is about sensitizing the science part of this biofertilizers and organic farming. See, after retirement, I worked in almost 3 companies. Amul Organics, then I worked in Karnataka Export House, and now I'm a consultant for Innomec Technologies. Okay, and even I was a part-time consultant in Trustgrow. So everywhere, the companies are depending on these sort of biofertilizers, seeing the flora, fauna structure of the soil and the plant. I told you fulvic acid. So based on these things, we are going to enrich it, but it doesn't mean to say that you can totally do away with the inorganic one. So for example, I was meeting a couple of coffee growers. They told we will not go 100% organic. So the natural farming, the organic farming is going to enrich the rhizo ecosystem and the plant ecosystem per se, and then it can have a better productivity in the long run. So, a lot of seaweeds in agriculture are also taken as natural biofertilizers, which has plant growth promoters. We have been working on this. A lot of pest and disease resistance is also occurring because of inorganic things. So this will make it vulnerable, and then there's a lot of stress to the plant. It can help. See, in a human body, when we say you take some watermelon or cucumber, or you take some citric acid or juice or whatever, why do we say? Because citric acid, basically, it tunes your hypothalamus for a higher temperature. It is not that it is going to lower the temperature of the atmosphere, but the brain itself should be tuned to take that stress. So therefore, people take a lot of oxygen enriched, gymnasiums have come. So that means when you take in more oxygen, or the same issue is also there in antioxidants when you take fruits, vegetables, and all these things. It can help you to tolerate stress. So similarly, if you are a diabetic patient or whatever it is, taking antioxidants, a higher amount of oxygen, okay, and then many of these things, especially I told you about citric acid and all that, it tunes your hypothalamus for a better sugar control. Yesterday I was reviewing an article about GLP-1S. Okay, this is going to reduce your sugar. GLP means glycogen-like peptide bonds. See, for example, when you take very rich protein or starch, simply your blood sugars will increase. Rather than you should take some satiating foods. Why do you ask people to eat a pani puri or to take some cucumber-based salads? Make it tasty so that you get the feeling of filling stomach and also with less calories. So similarly, all the seaweeds in agriculture also helps. So then we have natural boosters, which is going to help you the soil structure. We talk about mulching. We talk about organic manures. Okay, we talk about soil amendments, basically a gel type of material which can absorb 200 times of its molecule of water, and the slow release of the water is going to help. So that is one method of, we say moisture conservation. So even nutrient uptake is going to be better if your organic carbon content of the soil is high, if your humidity is going to be high, or if your moisture levels in the soil is high, there will be a lot of activity and rhizosphere activity which are going to enhance all this natural farming and a better nutrient uptake. See, simply by, you have seen some impoverished children, they have a lot of vitamin deficiencies, maybe it's kwashiorkor, maybe vitamin D, simply come and sit in the sun, you get vitamin D. So many of these things, take some nimbu, you get vitamin C. So many of these naturally available foods in the house, and at the same time there are so many naturally available materials for which you need not have to spend millions of dollars, because most of our inorganic fertilizers, they are all petroleum based product. After the diesel, petrol, gas, everything is removed, so what is left is the coal tar. We call it as wood naphtha. That means that is the one which is used to, put tar on the road. When you put wood naphtha tar, the black one on the road, that is also a petroleum product. So similarly, why not make it organic is the present discussion. See, many of the people in the natural farming, they don't know how to identify whether the damage has occurred due to aphid, rust, or poor watering. You see the different fungi, mildew, and all that. So these are all some methods to promote natural farming. So what are the myths? See, there are certain myths. I'll be giving you a case study right now. The myth number one is natural farming causes lower yields. This is a myth. The reality is, after initial 2 to 3 years of transition, when you build up enough organic matter content in the soil, okay, you can get yields comparable or even higher than chemical farming. Number one. The second myth is transitioning is too risky. Just like your diabetes management, there are many people who claim that we are going to reverse your diabetes without taking insulin or any tablet. So, well, the claims are there, but some people say that it is successful. Or, there was one, I forgot his name. He's from Narayana Netralaya. He was promoting a lot of diabetic reversal. Okay, some Bhujanga Shetty, whatever. He himself died of that particular experiment. So the third myth is organic farming and natural farming is not possible at a large scale. I will give you some examples and I'll show you photographs of the case study I did. It should be only in small plots and experiment. But it's a myth because, 1 minute, lot of people have tried. I'll give you a thing. Not natural farming is just organic farming. See, when Subhash Palekar comes out with ZBNF, ZBNF means zero-based natural farming. Okay, it is not organic farming. Natural farming is how to preserve the antigen-antibody reaction, or your body to be very, very sensitive to insulin or to drugs, or can I take your coping mechanism of the body and whether your body can fight with antibodies. That is called as natural. Organic farming means simply eating cucumbers and but trying to rejuvenate your health. Similarly, in case of farming also, simply applying organic fertilizer does not become organic farming, or it does not become natural farming unless the local flora and fauna are preserved. I will be very quickly going to the next one. See, the core components in the transition from inorganic to organic is the improvement of soil fertility. Soil fertility means not only having NPK and all the 20 micronutrients. Your soil should be able to absorb moisture. Your soil should be able to preserve all the nutrients, NPK, boron, zinc, silicon, whatever, and it should be made solubilizing and available to the plant. See, for example, when I take the red soil in and around Bangalore, it is very rich in iron, but iron gets fixed. The ferrous molecule is going to be fixed. So how to solubilize it? To solubilize in a red soil or a black soil, you will have to apply a lot of organic content, and especially humic acid and fulvic acid content must be high. That is how the soil fertility is going to increase along with the CEC. CEC means I have already told, cation exchange capacity. Reduce water dependency. I told you in natural farming, we also have mulching. I told you many of the gels. Okay, in organic farming, there are so many organic molecules which are synthesized from cow dung and so many things. Okay, vapasa, whatever. So they help in absorbing moisture 200 times of the molecular weight. Resilience, I told you the NICRA initiative. Improving crop diversity and soil structure to make farms more resilient. See, if we take in and around Hyderabad, people use BT cotton, and it's a very, very hot climate, and predominantly they have both black and red soil, with that high temperature, the germination is not coming up to the standard. Until you have 85% germination, you cannot go for the cotton crop. So people do sowing twice, thrice. So they should see that a plant population, suppose, in an acre you require about 100 plants for an optimal yield. What will you do if about 50 plants die and, it does not germinate? So you have lost a season. So they do dibbling, sowing 3 to 4 times to maintain the population. So that is a plant population. Therefore, this sort of resilience also comes under natural farming. So Jethro Tull, okay, he was a British farmer long back who came out with the concept of zero tillage. Zero tillage means don't till the land, okay? Simply living. That's also called a zooming cultivation. The children study it in 9th standard. So if you allow the soil to accumulate moisture, organic content, humus, fulvic acid and so on, okay, we can think it as natural. See, but to our dismay, the organic area is just 5.61 of the 625.6 million hectares of cultivable land in India. So it is, the acreage is less, but the awareness is more. This is the issue here. The organic production is just 1.13 million tons out of the 354 million tons of horticulture and about 352 million tons of agriculture put together. So therefore, even today, the chemical production is high, but today's lecture is going to contribute to the higher awareness of natural farming. Like, it is like a diabetic patient, not only taking insulin and all the tablets, your diet, okay? There are 3 issues in any of the disease management. A strict diet, drug, okay, and timing of the drug. Okay, that is how you are going to manage. See, now organic farming, the soil health on one side, using a non-GMO seed. See, non-GMO means genetically modified organism. We say BT cotton is a genetically modified seed. It is going to be resistant to Helicoverpa armigera, the cotton bollworm. Okay, natural pest control. See, when you are going to spray a pesticide, you are going to kill the natural, the beneficial insect and the harming insect. So animal welfare. See, suppose, you should allow this crop livestock interaction, put a lot of cows, sheep, buffaloes, and then goats, of course, will start browsing the plant, so nobody uses goat. But the sheep, it is called as penning of sheep. See, if a farmer brings about 200 sheep into the farmer's field and they are going to urinate and, put the litterings over there, he's paid some money. That is one way of how the animal welfare also can take place. Biodiversity is preserved. Obviously, we should reduce the synthetic chemicals and go for the parasynthetic organic thing. For example, marigold, is a very important crop. Marigold can be used as a trap crop in tomato. And the marigold flowers can be powdered and then it can be used as a biopesticide. So, and it can be used as a botanical pesticide. So therefore, there are many issues of awareness. Slowly, what will happen is, you will not only make your farm, India and your body totally chemical free. It is something like, integrating Ayurveda, Siddha, allopathy, exercise, yoga. Many things are today integrated in a disease management. Whether it is cancer, it is sugar, it is BP. And that's how people claim that, the longevity and the health is going to improve. So there are top organic fertilizer, even banana peel, eggshell, use tea powder. See, today, when all your BBMP waste is accumulated, they ask you to put the dry waste and the wet waste. The wet waste are again converted into some sort of organic fertilizer. I don't say organic fertilizer because they don't know about it. They will sell you this BBMP waste for 900 rupees 1 ton. You can contact any BBMP waste management manager. You can take that BBMP waste, segregate it, convert into wood ash, vermicompost, onion peel, seaweed, leaf compost, cow dung compost, and removing the other things. So that is how today there are a lot of startups. One of my cousin brother's son, okay, he is at Shumaga, he has been doing this waste to wealth. So he is trying to convert the BBMP waste into fertilizers. So many such entrepreneurs have come up. I told you about seaweed extract, humic and fulvic acid. Okay, amino has biostimulants. Of course, you should be very careful because recently the agriculture department has banned certain biostimulants and not to cheat. Protein hydrolysates, okay, microbial inoculants. I told you about rhizobium culture, mycorrhizal fungi, silicon-based biostimulants, chitosan and biopolymers. Okay, then vitamins and natural plant extracts in controlling the diseases, organic acids. Okay, this is how the mechanism of the biofertilizer. Okay, when the rhizosphere means in and around the roots, if you are going to increase it with microbial population, beneficial organisms, okay, Arca microbial concern. Arca is the brand name for IHR, but otherwise many companies and universities have also come out with lot of consortia of microorganisms. You can use them as well, field application. Okay, lot of, see, for biofertilizer production, you don't require a factory and a very big name like Zuari or somebody. You can only do a startup in your village and do it. Okay, and you can also test it in your small greenhouses and start applying. Okay, then I told you humic acid is soil focused, fulvic acid is plant focused. Okay, they work in complementary but they work differently. Humic acid enriches the cation exchange capacity, stimulates the soil microbes, whereas fulvic acid, when is applied through this organic, whether it is spray, aerial spray, obviously when you give a aerial spray of a nano fertilizer or something, the hydrathodes, which are the part of the stomata, is going to be expanded. And obviously, please gentlemen, you should know that the entire photosynthesis takes place before 11 o'clock. After 11 o'clock, no photosynthesis. And in the night, actually, the oxidation reaction. Okay, that means plants start releasing carbon dioxide. So never sit near a plant in the night. So that is how fulvic acid works. So fulvic acid, people are also giving foliar application. We have tried at IHR for mango and many other things. Okay, especially in the flowering season. Okay, in this January, February, we had a lot of flowering. Okay, we experienced fruit drop and also, the incidence of that mango borers. Okay, the stem borer of mango. Okay, it starts laying eggs in the flowering season. Okay, and then it drops out. The fruit fly, it is also actually called Docus dorsalis. So we should be very, very careful in applying all these things. You should know the physiology of the plant. You should know the structure of the soil. You should know how it works. You should know the crop canopy management, seasonality of a crop, when the fertilization occurs, when the pollen grains are going to come. And for example, now it is the mango season, post Ugadi of Karnataka and arriving Ugadi of Tamil Nadu, which comes on 14th April. So a lot of mango is going to come and ripe, and so you should know all these things, how to do it in agriculture. Soil it's a living organism, and you should also be very sensitive to fauna and flora in agriculture. Okay, whether the pollinating insects, you should not kill them. Pest control is also going to take place by birds, especially all the fruit borers, larvae, they're all going to be eaten by the birds. Okay, manure production by the animals, don't throw away the cow dung, collect it and allow the cows or sheep or whatever your livestock to, actually defecate in your land. Okay, that's what the cow herd or the shepherd has to do it. So by this, you should understand we can regulate our climate, erosion control, topsoil, improve soil fertility, and so on. So all these things put together is natural farming. Okay, organic revolution, we have already told you about all these things. These are some of the, if you know nitrogen deficient, the yellowing you can see at different stages. If copper deficiency is there, you see the top portion. This is how you move into transition to natural farming. and the various symptoms of nutrient deficiencies should also be identified and corrective measure should be applied. See, it is not, I am not recommending that, in inorganic farming is throw some fertilizer knowingly or unknowingly and simply move away. No. Natural farming is slowly making a farmer as an agriculture scientist, a physiologist, an agronomist. He should know the tricks of trade. Suppose you are cooking food. If you do not know what nutrients are going to be there, whether those nutrients are going to be available in the cuisine, you are no good cook. Okay, so therefore, even natural farming, you should know the nitty-gritty of these things. Then the soil microbes, more number of soil microbes, decomposers break down plant residues. I told you about the Arca microbial decomposer. You should know the sulfur cycle, oxidation in reaction. Thiobacillus is one organism. Phosphorus cycle, Pseudomonas, vesicular arbuscular mycorrhiza, nitrogen fixing. So you should not kill all these organisms. By application of various amendments and biofertilizers very intelligently, you should play with the ecosystem of your rhizosphere. Okay, then fresh cow dung, cow urine, jaggery, native soil, pulse floor, water. I'll tell you how the Jivamrit is made, okay, in the next coming slides. So all these things we can use it. Some of the natural pesticides, garlic and chili spray can be used for caterpillars, beetles. Don't think chili is going to give you very, that pungent feeling. Neem oil spray, citrus oil spray, it will attack ants. Just take some nimbu peel and put it on the floor. Okay. Neem oil, it's a disinfectant we use in our bathrooms. Okay, similarly, herbal oil spray, insecticidal soap is also used against white flies and thrips. So even farmyard manure, I told you, you should have a 2% of organic content. I told you about, carbon sequestration. You should boost your soil microbial activity and all these things. Don't burn the crop residues. Kindly bury them. Okay, chop them into small pieces or convert them into biochar by pyrolysis. Pyrolysis means cooking the residues, converting into a black liquid, almost like tar. Apply it in the soil. It improves the organic content. So enriching soils, we have already told. Seaweeds are natural biofertilizers, and we have experimented on seaweeds as a plant growth promoter, and it improves pest and disease resistance. Both in mango also we have tried. It improves your stress tolerance. This is something like the GLP-1S, okay, glycogen-like peptide. Okay, there are certain things like seaweeds used even in the human body, which is going to improve your insulin uptake, improve your insulin solubility, avoid insulin resistance, and have a better management. Similarly, here also it works. Okay, it triggers the cytokinins and the gibberellins. Seed germination is going to be stimulated. Root development and flowering. So we have the compound in our organic circles called as fluorozen. Fluorozen, it works as a flowering hormone where the flower drop is going to be reduced. That means basically it is reducing the gibberellic acid and increases the flower health, and then the pollination is also going to be increased because the stigma is really going to come out, and that is how the double fusion, triple fertilization takes place. Okay, then we have already told this. Macrobial control, microbial control, live mulching, plant canopy management to harness sunlight, allelopathy, the root exudates are also going to be used. So even neem, I have already told, neem oil and neem cake, which are going to be used. And today, because there is a DAP shortage, we have a nano DAP coming from IFCO, we have nano urea, and the labor is very costly. I made a study because each drone can carry about 15 liters of a liquid. So 15 liters of nano urea or nano DAP half a liter of nano urea is enough for 1 acre. So therefore, 15 liters of the nano molecule means you should cover 30 acres. That is where the extension comes into picture. So if I put 30 farmers together and pay about 12,000 rupees, okay, all the 30 farmers are going to be covered and the fertilizer is going to be spread within a matter of 1 hour. Don't you think it is really smart farming? Rather than employing 2 human laborers, paying them 500 rupees, 1000 rupees per day, and the productivity is very, very less. So if 30 farmers share 12,000 rupees, it comes to about 500 rupees for each farmer. With 500 rupees, your entire operation and labor operation is finished. You need not be at the obligation of the farmer. So anyway, we have got other molecules. Okay, we have nano encapsulated neem oil, silver nanoparticles, so many zinc or any of the nanoparticles. Okay, they are all clay-based. Copper nanoparticles work as pesticide. So that is how we are going to improve the uptake. Nanoparticles means 10 to the power minus 6. That is going to be the size of the molecule. And then it goes deep into the plant system and it improves your pesticide or a nutrient uptake. And the entire body and the physiology of the plant is made very, very highly sensitive. Now that's why, when you talk of systemic insecticide, in Kannada we call it as a beautiful translation. Sharira Vahaka Kitanashakagalu. That means the entire body is made to uptake those pesticides and nutrients. Fantastic. See, that's why slowly, not only knowing agronomy of a farm, you should know the physiology of how it works. Okay, that is how today's agriculture and natural farming works. So, these are some of the core approaches. I think my time is going and we'll take more things in the discussion. Basically, a natural farming, when I transit, I am working on the organic seed system, a non-pesticidal management to control pest. I integrate livestock. I integrate water and moisture management. I change my adaptive cropping systems, Kharif, Rabi, summer. Okay, one season I put C3, C4 plants, maize or rice. Alternate season I put a dicotyledonous plant for or some legume for improved rhizobium bionutrification, okay, and improving the fertility of the soil and so on and so forth. So in that sense, I'm trying to make the whole agriculture not just organic, but natural. Somebody told the approach today is between natural farming and agriculture production, we are trying to make our farming not just input intensive, but we want to make our crops and human body for more climate sensitive. That's why all this yoga, you have all this naturopathies and naturotherapies. They put you on a slimming program in Jindal. All these are basically taking the same approaches. What was your food habit? How to change the food habit? How to make a balanced diet between carbohydrates, nutrients, vitamins, and fats, and then improve your absorption, okay, and improve your antioxidant structure in the body. I told you about the GLP-1s, glycogen-like peptides in the body, so that it can absorb better. It can release the sugar slowly in the body. I think you already know that the liver of the body can store food worth 52 days. Even for 52 days, if you don't eat food, nothing happens. Only thing is you should start drinking water, and slowly the liver will shrink in size. And liver is the only organ of the body which can grow even from a small tissue of the liver. You can enlarge it and make it to grow into a big liver. So these are some of the approaches, the forward linkages and the support systems. Okay, I can go on and on. Basically, the nutrients, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. The famous Gayatri mantra. Okay, Om Bhu Bhuvaha Swaha Tat Savitur. Savitur means with the sunlight, Anna. Okay, Anna Utpadana. That means the glucose molecule comes from the sunlight, carbon, hydrogen, or H2O, and that is water and carbon dioxide put together in the presence of sunlight makes your glucose molecule C6H12O6. It has been told in our Vedas long back, before in 1885 or someone, I think some Dutch scientist got a Nobel Prize for photosynthesis. It's all right, we are not worried who gets the prize, but the nutrient cycling, micronutrient uptake, okay, all the 20 essential nutrients, it may be iron, manganese, zinc. Okay, manganese is at the center of the chlorophyll molecule. More the greenery, more is the chlorophyll, and better is the photosynthesis. And even the stomatal structure, which is on the dorsal side of the leaf, don't neglect them, because that is the one which is used for spraying. And your hydathode activity, okay, that's why irrigation is normally given in the night, so that when the plant is succulent or when more water is there, the stomato expands, it expands and keeps it ready for gaseous exchange. And early morning when the sunlight, let us say sunrise is at about 6 o'clock. So before 11 o'clock, it can harness maximum sunlight and have a better efficient photosynthesis. That is how the entire natural farming is structured. Okay, we work on all these things. I think somewhere I'll just stop sharing and we'll open it for discussion. I think the time is up. What do you say, Dhanlakshmi ma'am?
Yes, sir. You're done
Hello?
with the presentation, sir?
Yeah. I will take another 2 slides and conclude,
Okay,
so
okay,
that we
fine.
can open it for discussion.
Okay. Please proceed, sir.
Just 2 more slides.
No
So
problem.
therefore, gentlemen, last but not the 2 slides, the entire natural farming, whether it is rhizosphere, it is above the soil, below the soil, the physical, chemical, biological properties are going to be played with microflora, fauna, okay, improving the porosity, and then playing with the pH. See, normally you know that, a neutral pH of 7 is very ideal for a crop. Okay, but if it is a laterite soil like Kerala, Idukki district, where only cardamom thrives in that acidic laterite structure, okay, and then alkaline structure, our jawar and other things in our North Karnataka, they are saline resistant. It can tolerate. So basically, seeing our salinity, alkalinity, acidity, and all the soil structure, we have to play with different natural products, whether organic, inorganic, or whatever, and see that our rhizosphere, our plant ecosystem is going to be very, very sensitive and a different, better uptake. So we work out on all these things. I think I can go on like this. Okay, these are some of the fertilizers you see here. These are slides taken up from my earlier companies and the present company I'm involved. So we have Rootex, which improves root, Amul Rich Plus, which has more organic carbon, Amul Gold, more of phosphorus, Amul Phosphorich, it climbs up to 10% of phosphorus, Power Plus, it comes in granules. See, all these are synthesized from the cow dung, which is available in the Amul plant at Gujarat. Okay, Amul Rich, okay, it's a consortium. Okay, now, I'm working for one more company called Inomec, and then, just with urea and high-tech biofor. You see how the green color is more. So because not only NPK and the better chlorophyll content, and this is more going towards organic and natural. Similarly, we have a high-tech BioGood to grow, okay, before and after. After spraying some of these biostimulants, you see the bowl and you see the leaf structure and the canopy of the cotton plant. And you can have one more high-tech good grow. You see these yellowing leaves, and the after spraying, you see how the green color is there. Unlocking the soil potential with our arbuscular mycorrhiza, we call it as high-tech miracle. Okay, then it facilitates nutrient and phosphate uptake. We have high-tech Haladi Bioshamana. That means all the diseases are gone. It kills many of these things with this consortia, a very healthy plant. Then high-tech Haladi Bioshamana, you give a spray on the fruits and other things. Okay, it is picked up by the stomata and the hydathodes. You have a healthy plant here. Then a beetle bioshield, even for pesticides, we can use this beetle bioshield. You see how we are using this long stick and giving a spray. And before and after, you can see here, Biovardhaka is another things. it is acts against the pest and the mites, ticks, and all those things. So this is how the spray is going to be given, and then all these things can go on. And this is the Peddapadu village I told you in Jogalamba, Gadwal Mandal, where my students and myself, we went there. He has a cropping intensity of 225 acres. He uses Jivamrit, which is made by jaggery, chana flour, cow dung, 5 liters of cow urine, and 1 kg of ant hill. We say the Sampka Putta, the palm putta matti, which is a very porous structured things. Then he uses some waste decomposer, makes a 20 liters of the solution, and then converts it into 200 liters per acre and gives a spray. You see, for collection of cow dung, making Jivamrit, look at the structure. These are some of the biodecomposers, and you see how the tanks are structured. In this Peddapadu village I visited here, he uses something called as a waste decomposer. We have similar Arca decomposer in IAHR. Even many universities also have these products. You see how he has structured this, how the water is pumped and converts into the Jivamrit solution. And after the fermentation should occur, you cannot put a live cow dung, because you cannot put your live feces into the paddy fields. People say China used to do it. No, you are wrong, you are misguided. Even human feces, it should undergo anaerobic fermentation, like we have in our flats. Sewage treatment plant. We have two methods of sewage treatment. One is the aerobic treatment, the other one is the anaerobic treatment. Anaerobic treatment is very costly, and flats cannot afford for the maintenance charges we pay. So therefore, what we are doing in our flat is aerobic treatment, and the unwanted matter is sold at 14 rupees a kilo. So when I was a committee member, I told them, use anaerobic fermentation, we can start preparing fertilizers. So whether you will stay in the flat or you will become a biofertilizer preparing plant. So therefore, they are going for aerobic fermentation. But remember, all the Jivamrit and biofertilizers are all made by anaerobic fermentation. I repeat it here. See, this is how the structure, this is the farmer Vijay Bhaskar Reddy, those are the organic tomatoes, and you see how he is going to prepare biochar, collect all the other fodder, also has a lot of cattle, and the feces is collected. You see how they are putting cow urine, again fermented, converting into this one. Look at this, all that cow dung collected and made into balls for the preparation of Jivamrit, and look at the final solution. And then we calculated this one, okay, with ZBNF, okay, without any organic natural farming, it gives 6 quintals in red gram. With the organic farming, it gives 2.5, 4 quintals. That means there is a reduction in the yield in the first 3 years. Slowly it picks up. So tomato, okay, in case of tomato, it was reverse. Okay, here, no ZBNF, if you put inorganic fertilizer, it gets 1,020, 250 rupees per box. Whereas here, it is also 28, but it gets only 1,000 per box. That means the tomatoes were looking good with inorganic fertilizers, but okay, but the rate is going to be high. Okay, did you understand what I am saying? So therefore, the premium prices are not there, but the yields will reduce in the initial years, but nevertheless, slowly it picks. Therefore, our present government, Paramparagat Krishi Yojana, which is going with the natural farming, it will enhance. These are the organic ZBN of tomatoes. Okay, many times people have also found non-ZBNF gives higher, it includes, with ZBNF your cost of cultivation is reduced because you are using cow dung, Jivamrit and all that. And in the ZBNF, your net income is going to increase for all the crops because the quality of the produce is high. Whether it is mango, red gram, paddy or whatever, okay, the non-ZBNF, the inorganic one fetches a less price. Okay, that is how it is all done. This was the team, okay, which we went, and myself with that agriculture officer in Peddapadu village, we did things. I have published an article on drones in agriculture. You can just go through it. Okay, in the same Agri Information, I published this articulture. Okay, if you want to do organic farming, lot of labor. Whereas if you use a drone, it is quite fast and simple. I told you a drone tank capacity is 20 liters, 500 ml per acre, nano spray. Okay, it can cover 40 acres per hour. Cost per acre would come to 400 rupees. I told you 4 about 16,000 rupees has to be paid for the drone. But still, instead of employing one man labor and one woman labor, this is quite better. Anyway, this is the last slide. To conclude, natural farming, the replacement of external inputs, okay, should lead to reduction in variable cost. That's why, we have a magazine called LEIA, Low External Input Agriculture. That means Paramparagat Krishi and Sustainable Agriculture means you should be able to generate all your kitchen waste, farm waste and convert into fertilizer like our sewage treatment plant. And similarly, use it in your field. Then bulky organic inputs are very, very bulky and unlike nano urea and all that. Therefore, higher transportation and labor cost. Okay, on-farm resource generation of these fertilizers can only cut down production cost. But as on date, organic, conventional and hybrid systems are in place. Okay, we have to produce more food at affordable cost, ensure livelihoods for farmers and cut down the environmental cost. So I will stop sharing here and now I open it for discussion.
Thank you very much, sir, for a wonderful and informative presentation. I will take up the questions now. So the first question is, what are the first
Can you
steps?
switch on somebody's video to answer? Okay, you can switch on your own video. Thinking you are
Sir,
my
we
student,
don't have
I'll answer.
access to videos, sir.
Okay. Tell me,
Okay.
Dhanlakshmi.
Okay, I'll move on to the next question. First question. What are the first steps a farmer should take to begin transitioning to natural farming?
Yeah, see, now let us say Dhanlakshmi madam is having a 5-acre farm. See, it's not that you give it to lease or you do it yourself. That is a different question. But you should know what is your type of soil, what microorganisms are there, what is the fertility of the soil. Okay, you will go for a soil test. You will go for, and you start building enough organic matter in and around your own 5-acre farm. Let us say you have a farm in Salem. Okay, there is a lot of organic matter available which are thrown here and there. Either you can employ labor or in your own farm you can start developing them. You have a compost pit and slowly improve the organic content of your farm. And then even while putting the crops also, you can use certain bioinoculants like Jivamrit, Panchamrit. Okay, I told you I gave so many examples. And whether you are going to put it in Kharif, Rabi or summer, or are you going to put it in the rainy season or the cold season, if you know this much of climate sensitivity, I think Dhanlakshmi as a farmer has already put one step into natural farming.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, should farmers convert their entire land at once or adopt it gradually?
No. They will not do it all at once. It is, they see, suppose Dhanlakshmi is a farmer with 20 acres of land. So you will start converting 2 acres in each year. Okay, 20 acres full conversion, nobody does it because, see, today the organic tomato or whatever you grow in your farm is for a premium and home consumption. See, I will give you an example of this paddy rice. See, normally Tellahamsa is the variety, or you call it as Karnool Sona Masuri. Normally, the rice grown in the Rabi season, in the cold season, is used for home consumption and not the rice which is grown in the rainy season. Similarly, in case of jawar, whatever jawar roti you eat, that bhakri or whatever, there also the Rabi jawar is used. The jawar grown in the cold season is used because it has got a higher taste, better sweet content and so on. So therefore, today the organic customers are very premium customers. Okay, even if you go to some supermarket, Reliance Mart or whatever, Geo Mart or whatever, you can see some shelf where they say that this is an organic product. It is premiumly priced. See, that is how we will have to, tap our market. See, but unfortunately, farmer is not able to do this, or even agricultureinformation.com, or people who give this sort of knowledge should also start educating people. Maybe in the next lecture, we can tell how to premiumly price an organic product or a natural farming product. See, for example, the honey today, honey. We have, Patanjali has come out with different flavors. They have the neem honey, they have the, honey from ashwagandha honey. So they have used different flowers of different crops based on the principles of Vriksha Ayurveda. And then, almost if you take that honey, it is as good as taking ashwagandha. It is as good as taking some other herb into your diet. For example, the pachakarpura, or we say the edible saffron. The edible camphor. Or, we can use only cardamom plants and prepare honey. And it's a very premium priced honey called as cardamom honey. I saw it in Idukki district recently. So therefore, I wish to tell the viewers here, the premium place for the natural farming products, the niche product, what we say, has to be premiumly priced, because farmer is having an opportunity cost. He is losing certain income because of moving into natural farming. If agriinformation.com and some people like us create enough awareness, and if the markets respond to that premium pricing, I think both myself and agriinformation.com have done a very good job.
Okay. What support system are essential, like training, inputs, community networks?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a good question asked. Like agriinformation.com gives awareness, it gives lectures, it will spread videos. So even responsible and central government institutes like IIHR or University of Agriculture Science, Bangalore, which is a state-funded agriculture university, Krishi Vigyan Kendra, they do have regular programs, training programs, on-farm trials, demonstrations throughout the year, so that, people are made aware. Whenever you go to a Krishi Vigyan Kendra, in NGO, they are giving awareness and all those things. But I want to tell you a stark reality, that the farmer is not getting the expected prices for his produce. So therefore, somewhere down the line, he is losing interest. It is, suppose if I recommend people, okay, do yoga, do Gayatri Mantra Japa, okay, eat food, fast. See, unless it improves your health, why are you going to do it? Nobody will do it. So today, everybody, whether it is the faith of God, faith of religion, faith of Ayurveda, faith of science, people say, show me the results, I will do it. Similarly, farmer says, get me premium prices, I will do whatever you say. This is how the bottom line goes.
Okay. Based on your experience, is natural farming a scalable solution for India's agriculture sector?
No. See, I showed you that first slide. If only a small percentage is doing organic farming, like Sri Lanka, you cannot convert entire Sri Lanka into organic farming and doom your agriculture and horticulture production. See, I asked this question to my economists who may be hearing here. I say that just because natural farming and organic farming has come, are we going to close down all our pesticide and fertilizer industry? No. At the most, it is going to, the transition will never be 100%. These are all claims made by various organic producers who are in the market today. I don't see a 100% change. See, it is like, taking insulin, doing exercise, doing yoga, and also, doing some meditation. All these things are complementary and supplementary, but definitely they are not going to eliminate the other things. Okay, they will not simply, it is not going to eliminate the other things. It can only supplement, it can complement. Okay, therefore, organic farming and natural farming, in my view, is two things. One is creation of awareness, creating a niche market, creating a more healthy food ecosystem, even if it is on a hybrid mode, even if that fellow is using a little of inorganic fertilizer, no problem. But today, everybody is aiming at improving the soil health, the soil rhizosphere, the soil ecosystem, and so on. So people are very well aware. See, just like you are very aware that there should not be any stagnant water either in the toilets or in our sewage treatment plant, because they are going to harbor mosquitoes. They are going to harbor many insects which can spread diseases. So therefore, creating an overall awareness in the societal system is a much larger consequence than simply calling it as an organic product and some people saying I am a vegan. People say that they don't drink milk because it is coming from an animal product. They don't eat ghee. I said, come on, when our Lord Balaji eats ghee and milk products, so the concept of vegan itself is questionable. So what the vegan or vegetarian concept in the Vedas is, okay, you can take any milk is a natural food exudate. For example, sweat is also an exudate. You cannot eat or drink sweat. So therefore, our Vedas have also classified that which are the things should be eaten. And obviously the non-vegetarian does not find much literature, and I am not aware probably. So that is how, to conclude, we improve the awareness, improve the sensitivity of the rhizosphere and the other systems, and maybe in the long run we will have a natural farming based system. We cannot say we are totally organic. So therefore, calling something as natural farming based system and totally organic and totally vegan is far from reality. Thank you.
Okay. What role should government policies play in promoting or regulating natural farming?
Yeah. Already, the present government has come out with Paramparagat Krishi Yojana. There are a lot of subsidies in the Agri Infrastructure Fund. Okay, a lot of FPOs are given these things, and they are given a buyback. Market linkages are there. Okay, then Krishi Bima Yojana is already there. Okay, many schemes are already in operation to promote these concepts, and many FPOs, when I've been touring, I keep seeing, and they're already doing these things. Because suppose if it's a mango or grape, very shortly we are going to organize a organic mango mela in our flat, just in under 20 days. So people, and we will keep both inorganic mango and organic mango. People can eat it and taste and see the difference themselves rather than we explaining. So like that we are trying to create awareness. Government is also helping. Lot of media support like agriinformation.com and even training institutes like the Krishi Vigyan Kendra, NGOs, they're already into this job.
Okay. Sir, what is your final take? Is natural farming a practical reality or more of
You
a
see,
myth?
now I will tell you, see, now I am 64 years. Okay, I started my BSAG in 1981, about 50 years back. See, now if I see the transition of this 50 years, in the Green Revolution days, that was 1965, I was just a 2-3-year-old kid. Lal Bahadur Shastri had come to my grandfather's place. I have seen Lal Bahadur Shastri. That is called the HYVP program, High Yielding Variety Program. In the Green Revolution, with both IADP and IAEP, because we put a lot of chemical fertilizers, used hybrid varieties, our production shot up, and today we are highly self-sufficient. I told you 354 million metric tons of horticulture, 352 million tons of agriculture. Today we are self-sufficient in production, we are exportable surplus. So even if you try this organic and natural farming experiment, nothing will happen. We will go into the Paramparagat Krishi Swavalamban Bharat, Vikasit Krishi Abhiyan Yojana. Already government is doing, and today I feel after 50 years, okay, I might have retired, but the Indian farmers are not retired. They are doing more healthier farming, more ecosystem based farming, Okay, they are using a lot of predators and parasites, doing natural farming. They are using more of biopesticides. Especially, I told you that chrysanthemum and marigold based botanicals are also used. And lot of composting, and then organic carbon content is enriched. So today's farmer is much better when I compare him with the 1965-68 Green Revolution farmer. Our Indian farmers are the best because they have 300% cropping intensity. They take Kharif, Rabi, summer. Unlike, American farmers, they grow only one season. And many farmers are given holiday. And you should thank your Tamil Nadu. They have 300% cropping intensity. They grow all three seasons: rainy season, cold season, and summer season. So thanks to the Indian agriculture, Indian farmers, agriinformation.com and the agriculture scientists. सारे जहां से अच्छा हिंदोसिता हमारा.
Okay, Jain, sir. Thank you very much, sir. We have now completed the round of questions on behalf of agricultureinformation.com. We would like to thank Dr. V.K. Jayaraghavendra Rao for the talk and for answering the questions. This
Yes,
meeting will
thank you,
now be closed.
agriinformation.com. Hope to meet you again. Bye. Yes.
Bye, sir.